Hi, guys. Welcome to the second season of the podcast. The podcast is no longer The Porch. The podcast is fresh, new, and rebranded as the Back to Eden Project podcast. So today, this episode is very, very near and dear to my heart, and it's been something that has needed to be done for a while now, but I believe a lot of things had to take place in order for me to get to this space. Um, so yeah, today I'm going to be sharing my very public testimony on my time through New Age, my time through the occult, into meeting the person of Jesus Christ through my occult practices. So I think to truly start this podcast off right, this testimony off on the right foot, I have to take it all the way back to the beginning. So bear with me as I rummage through very blurry memories of my childhood. So let's get into it. So growing up, I was a very lonely child. This is what I remember. This is what my brain remembers. I remember being very, very lonely, extremely depressed, extremely anxious. I knew that I was different. I felt a little different than most children, and I think a lot of it just has to do with my environment. My environment wasn't the best. Just grew up with parents that weren't physically and emotionally available for me. And so throughout my life, I learned how to do a lot of things on my own. Even to this day, I'm 26 years old today, and everything that I know and everything that I have learned has been through trial and error. Has been because I have dove in and I have experienced life myself. And I think oftentimes growing up, I wish that I had that care. I wish that I had that guidance, because maybe I wouldn't have gotten into the things that I got into, growing up as a child in my adolescence, and now as an adult in her mid late 20s, whatever 26 is. Let's just say mid 20s. Um so yeah, I just remember growing up extremely unstable. And that was something that was really, really, really hard for me. And like I said, I was just extremely lonely. And again, I don't have a very clear visual of my childhood. So a lot of things are blurry. A lot of things are blurry. There are years, time blocks that are just blocked out that I really can't seem to remember. But what I do remember is having very strange spiritual experiences. I couldn't quite pinpoint what was happening to me, but I know that it scared me. And I don't know if I ever thought, does this happen to anybody else? All I knew was that it was happening to me in my world, where I'm my father and my mother, and I'm parenting myself. This just felt beyond comprehension. I couldn't understand what was happening. And so I remember growing up, like having instances of like me sleeping or just about to go to sleep, and just consistently hearing my name being called. And I would wake up and look around, and my siblings are sleeping here. It's like my dad is asleep right here. And it's like nobody was in the room. Like no physical person was in the room. And this continued for years. And it freaked me out. Sometimes I just felt curious, and maybe I just got to a point where it would happen so often that it didn't frighten me. I think more than anything, I was just very confused as to why I was hearing somebody like so clearly call my name, but no one was calling my name, right? And so as I grew up, I these experiences got, I guess, more candid and more strange. And I remember in these times feeling more fear than I had when I would be hearing my name called in the middle of the night. There are a few instances that really kind of shook me. I remember one night I had to be, maybe I was in middle school, I'm not sure, but I was laying in my bed and my door was open to my bedroom, and we had wood floors throughout the house, and so it was really, I could hear when somebody was like walking through the kitchen, like down the way to come to my room. And so I remember laying in bed, the door's open, and I just hear these slow footsteps like steadily approaching my bedroom door. And I remember this dread that came over me. It was a dread that came over me because it was different than the footsteps of my brother. It was different than the footsteps of my sister. My sister was sleeping right in the next bed right over to me. It was different than the footsteps of anybody I had known, and it was this feeling that came over me. It was this dread that came over me, and I remember this entity, whatever this was. I didn't have words for it at the time, but now I do as an adult. But I remember this entity just slowly walking, and it stopped at my bedroom frame door. And it's like we had this showdown. It's like I was looking at it and it was looking at me. Although my two physical pair of eyes could not see what was standing right in front of me, my knowing and my knack for intuition and my spiritual discernment, like all of those lights were like lighting up. And I was like, something is there. It's like I am not able to comprehend physically and see what is right in front of me, but there is something standing right in front of me, and I can feel it in the back of the hairs on the back of my neck would stand up. And I remember just hiding and not understanding like what was going on. And these are the type of experiences that I had growing up. And I also want to add, because this will really contribute to the story down the road, that as a kid, I dreamed a lot. I dreamed a lot. And I remember one particular dream that I had. I had this dream, and writing it off as nothing, but I don't know how many months or if this was like years down the road. I like have no concept of time, so please bear with me and forgive me. But I remember I seen a house in my dream, and I had never seen this house before, but for some reason it stuck out to me. And I remember I was super young. I was very, very young. I remember being in the car in the back seat and driving and coming upon this house, like seeing this house awake, and I wasn't dreaming, but I had seen this home before. And it wasn't like your typical home that you could maybe mix up and confuse with another home. Like, this was very distinguished. This home had a mural on the side of it. And that's what really drew me in. That's how I knew, like, man, like, I've seen this home before. I've seen this structure before in a dream that I had. And again, it's like at that time I had no concept for what I was experiencing. Yeah, like I thought it was weird, but it was something that I just brushed off. I just brushed off as nothing. I chalked it up to nothing. I thought like, hey, like that's interesting, but I never thought anything of it. And yeah, I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think anything was out of the ordinary. I just didn't have words to really comprehend my experiences as a child. And, growing up, I didn't grow up in the church at all. That wasn't my thing. My family didn't take me to church. I remember a few instances really young where I did go to church. Like my grandmother would bring me to church, like a vacation, like Bible school, like for kids and stuff like that. I remember doing those sorts of things, but it was never this instilled teaching. It was never this way that I was raised up in. And so I remember, like, as I just got older, being this like loner, like lonely kid was like really my identity at this time. I was very socially awkward, I would say, at least, but I also didn't think too highly of myself. So maybe nobody else thought that, but I remember just being so aware of myself all throughout elementary school, middle school, and high school. I didn't get into any sort of like partying or like drinking and drugs. Like it was just something that didn't really interest me. And I also was like had a lot of social anxiety, and so being in a space where I had to talk to people, and that wasn't for me. And so a lot of my abstaining wasn't because, I felt like God was saying to abstain. Like a lot of my abstaining was because I was so riddled with social anxiety. So in high school, I want to say about maybe sophomore year. I'm not too sure, but I had met a friend at the time, and she was attending a church and she had invited me to go youth group. And I was like, okay, like, sure, why not? I had always been, like I said, like very lonely, and I thought, okay, like maybe this could be like a good outlet for me to really, I don't know, just like like hang out and really get to know people. And so I remember attending the church and staying there for 4, 5-ish years. I was extremely, extremely loved at this church, and this is where I really started to learn about God and really started to learn about Jesus. And I was really mentored in this way. I call them my spiritual parents, but I had a married couple that really came alongside of me and loved me like a daughter. They loved me like a daughter, and I clung to them because this was like a pure love. I had never understood or known a love like that. And so as I was, walking in this, really their faith became my faith. Did I don't know if I want to say that I did accept Jesus and that I was following him. I want to say that I was, but I don't think I had an understanding of my own. And I've always been very, very wise for my age. And so I understood like theological concepts, and I could talk my way around Jesus and around God and around Christianity that would make someone think, my goodness, like you're so young and you have like all this wisdom. And I really don't think that I understood this wisdom and this relationship that I was, writing about and portraying to have. I don't think I really understood that for myself, but somehow I had this access to God to write these just just immaculate things about him. Like God has really gifted me to be a writer. Like I'm a phenomenal writer, and the way that I was writing about him, the way that I was writing about these theological concepts really like kind of like blew my mind. And I think because I understood how to write and talk my way around this, to me that meant, okay, like I'm saved. I have this relationship with God. But that is something that would really be tested when when I was able to move out of my mother's home and really just experience life for myself. So I ended up leaving the church for a very long time, about, I don't know, about 6 years, a really long time. So I really left the church really just sad and heartbroken, and just thinking that I was like brainwashed. And I remember in this time where I was kind of transitioning out of church and kind of really wanted to find my own way, I met a person that I began having a relationship with, and he was agnostic. He didn't, subscribe to any religion at all. He just kind of lived his life, and I really liked this person and I wanted to be with him, and we actually ended up, having a home together, living together. Our relationship was a deep relationship, but it was also very toxic, and it was abusive on both ends in different ways. We were just young. We were young, and we didn't have any concept of a healthy relationship. And so his ideas, and his thoughts and opinions on religion and life really became my ideas, and I really searched these thoughts out, and I came to the conclusion that I was brainwashed, and like God wasn't real, Jesus wasn't real, and that's just kind of was it. And so after, believe we were together for about 2.5 years, something like that. And we had broken up. It was really just time for us to split. It wasn't a healthy relationship. And so I moved back in with my mom. And in this time, I really wanted to really get on my feet again. I really wanted to understand who I was apart from this person, because I didn't. I didn't know who I was apart from this person. And so I began going to school for nursing. I wanted to be a nurse. Like, that's what I had come up with. This is what I thought would make my family happy. And so began going to school for nursing. And at this time, I had also applied for student housing. So I was living alone. I was living in this very small, like, studio apartment. And in this time, I just started to live just more, what's the word, more wild, like just more wild. Like, I was under my mom's roof. I had a lot of freedom. I was just out of like my first serious relationship, and I didn't know anything else. I wasn't experienced in anything else. And so in this time in this apartment, I had just accumulated a lot of different addictions to different substances, to different men. It's like I was obsessed with this control and this power that having different men in my corner brought me. And it was really just this, because I didn't have control in my life as a kid. Like, I felt that this is a way that I have control. It's like I knew that I held a lot of power there and within my sexuality, and so I really used that and wielded that to kind of just get what I wanted and what I needed out of situations. And I remember in this time I began to dream again. And I was having very, very vivid dreams, like dreams that I would have when I was a kid. And for years and years, I was not dreaming. I wasn't dreaming. I would just go to bed and wake up, and that would be it. And so to have this dream, it startled me because it didn't feel like a normal dream. And so I remember there was a man that I had been involved with years prior, and within this dream, I had seen his Instagram name on a billboard, and it just felt so strange and so surreal. And I had to figure out like, what is this? Like, this is kind of weird. Like, this is kind of strange to me. And so I sought him out and I messaged him, and we ended up talking for a week. And within this week, I had made this decision that I was told him that, like, I choose you. You know, I didn't have the capacity to choose you then, but it's like I'm choosing you now and I want you to choose me back. And so we talked for 1 week, and this person just ended up like ghosting me for about 4, 5 months. I didn't hear from him until about 5 months later. And I remember this like completely shattering and breaking my heart. And I couldn't understand why. I was actually very angry. I was very, very, very angry that I felt this way, that I felt so heartbroken that I couldn't move on. I've always been a person, like I had been living a life where, okay, it's like, you don't want to be with me? Okay, bye, because I have this person. Like, you don't want to, okay, bye. You don't want to choose me? Okay, bye. Like it it didn't affect me the way that this particular person was affecting me. And I had only been talking to him for a week. Yes, I knew him prior, but it's like within this week, I don't know what happened. And it frustrated me to my core. It frustrated me to my core that he just kind of left and just didn't say anything. And it more so really frustrated me that I wasn't able to move forward. Like it just felt like this block, and I couldn't understand it because I had never lived my life attached to somebody like that. And so I remember getting out of class one day and sitting in my car and having this thought that literally has never in my life. I was maybe 24 at the time, I believe. In my 24 years of living, I never would have thought to do this. But I had this thought that popped in my head, and the thought was, I'm going to get a tarot reading on this man. What? Like, I sit here now and I'm like, what? Like, what in the world? Like, what was happening at this time for me to like jump from not caring to caring so much that I was willing to seek out spiritual means to really understand what was happening. I wasn't even involved in occult practices, new age practice, anything spiritual at this point. But for some reason in my head, a thought came to mind that was, you should get a tarot reading on him. And I did. And I really, really, really did. And I remember getting this reading, and she told me what I already knew. It's like I didn't need cards or a tarot reader to tell me what I already knew. When you're a woman, you just kind of already know. You just kind of already know. But it wasn't the information that I received about him that shocked me. It was the information that she gave about me to me during the reading. And it shocked me. It shocked me to my core, and I didn't have any frame of reference for what she was even saying. But I remember at the end of the reading, she pulled two cards out. And she pulled out a healer card and she pulled out a witch card. And she was like, wow, like it's really rare that I see this. It's really rare that I see these two cards come out together. Like the ancestors and the spirit guides really want you to tap into that. Like she was like, you have magic in you. And they want you to tap into that. They want you to, do rituals and talk to them and worship them. And me, I was like, I literally was so like dumbfounded. I didn't even have a frame of reference. I didn't understand what she was saying. But because I was in this position where I was extremely lonely, I was extremely vulnerable, I was going through a heartbreak that I didn't understand. And even prior to that, I was extremely depressed, extremely anxious. Like I was riddled with every kind of mental illness you could probably think of, paired with heartbreak, paired with going to school to be a nurse. Like I cracked. I cracked. So I'm here just really struggling with my identity, really struggling with heartbreak, really struggling with school. And like I said, like I grew up lonely. I grew up alone. I grew up learning things alone. And so like it was me that was getting myself up out of bed every day. It was me that was pushing myself to to continue in nursing. And it's just like I couldn't handle it, and I cracked. On top of this lady saying that I'm a witch and that I'm a healer, I could not comprehend. Like there was so much like information and that was just pouring into me. And because I didn't have an identity, I was like, okay, like this is what she's saying. Like maybe I should seek this out. And so like I did, and I started to do a lot of research because I didn't understand new age. Like I didn't understand like girl, what do you mean rituals? Like, huh? Like what do you mean by that? Like I had no understanding, and so I took this deep dive. I took this deep dive into the new age kind of ideologies and thinking. And in this led me to also start practicing like on my own, like starting reading tarot on my own. And so I remember getting tarot cards and really starting to use these tarot cards. And it's like, all right, like okay, I felt like I had an identity now. I felt like I had meaning now because I was I was excelling in my occult practices very quickly. I was excelling in a way that would take people years, and I felt a lot of validation from this. I'm like, wow, like this is where I'm supposed to be. Like I am excelling in this. Like this is what I meant to do, and I loved what I did so much that like I was started to think of like ways that I could like make a career like out of this. Like, okay, how can I infuse the spiritual knowledge that I have with a career? Like clearly I'm good at this, and really my heart was I wanted to help people. But in this time I was also still very 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 bound. I was still very bound to this heartbreak and to this person. And like I said, it really began to just like piss me off. It made me so angry, and so I started doing readings myself on this person. Like, because I was going to find out what I wanted to find out. It's like, if he wasn't going to talk to me, it's like, I was going to go and find it out. Right. That was just the way that I was thinking at that time. And I remember opening up this world and being completely plagued by it. I didn't understand what was happening or what was going on, but I remember I was sick. I was sick all of the time, like unexplained sickness, like throwing up. I remember being in the car with my sister and having to pull over so I could throw up. Like there was no explanation as to why I was sick all of the time. I lost an extreme amount of weight in a small time. Like I remember my family asking me if I was on drugs, like if I was like doing some sort of drug that was like I don't know, like making me like not eat. Like I had lost a significant amount of weight. And within the studio apartment that I was living in, I would see like these shadows just like run across my my ceiling and my walls. And I remember again for the first time feeling this sense of dread come over me. It's like something would enter into my apartment and I could feel it. But it's like now I could also see. It's like I'm seeing these shadows like scurry across the walls. And it frightened me. It frightened me for months. I slept with the lights on. It was like this dread that would come over me. It's like if somebody was standing right behind you, like heavy breathing in your ear. That's what it was like. That's what the atmosphere of this apartment, that's what it became like. And I remember I was extremely depressed to the point where I was making videos like to each one of my family members. I was making videos. It's like there was no color in the world, and it was a scary feeling. It was very, very, very scary because I was living alone. I was going through heartbreak. It's like I was opening up, to spirituality in ways that I didn't understand. And truly, it's like not only like emotionally I was breaking down, but spiritually I was breaking down, and physically my body was breaking down. It's like I was sick. I couldn't eat. I lost so much weight. My face broke out so bad. And on top of that, I was having these horrific dreams. So at this time, the the man that had ghosted me, the man that I got a tarot reading on, re-entered into my life. Just randomly DM'd me one day, like 4 or 5 months later, and I replied, and we began talking again, and we hung out a few times. And this was kind of like a cycle that we would go through. It's like we would talk for a day or two, or 4 days, not even 4 days. It would always be like a day or two. Like we would meet up, get together. We had an intimate relationship. We would do what we did. And then like he would just be like out of my life again. Like I wouldn't hear from him. And this caused a lot of like just that wound that never healed was just like being ripped open every single time me and this person had any sort of contact. There was no room for me to really heal. And in this time, it's like there's just so much confusion like in my head. And I remember having a conversation with this person. I was at his home, and I looked him dead in the eye, and I told him, I think that we're supposed to be together. Like I genuinely thought in my head that I was supposed to be with this person. And because I was supposed to be with this person, because God was leading me to this person, like I had to stick beside this person no matter what it looked like. And I have to trust that God is gonna work it out somehow. Like this was my mindset. It's like when I would consult my spirit guides, when I would do tarot, it's like I would receive that answer. It's like, just be kind, be gracious, like work with this person. And I remember coming into agreement with this prophecy, and sorry, it nearly like taking my life and taking my sanity. I didn't understand what was happening or why things were happening the way that they were happening, but I knew in my mind and in my heart of hearts, I was like, this is the person that I'm supposed to be with, so I have to stick beside this person. I need to be praying and like and fasting for this person. And I remember in this time, like that was my biggest, like I was in bondage. I was in bondage to this person. And I remember there would be so many times where I would beg God, whatever God I believed in, to just release me from whatever this was, because I couldn't handle the amount of confusion and the amount of torture and pain that I was in. And because I didn't understand God's character, because I didn't know God, because I didn't have a Bible, I wasn't opening a Bible. It's like whatever the things that I was dreaming, the things that I was receiving through tarot, like that was my truth. Like that was my truth. And nobody could take it away from me. And so it's like if my cards told me to go do this, my cards told me to go do that, then that's what I did. because ultimately that was my truth. And this caused an amount of suffering that I don't even have words for. That I don't have words for. And so I got to this point where I didn't understand why this person, it's like I was doing everything that I could. It's like I was being so completely honest about things I would never be honest about with anybody else, because I thought they would run away from me and not want to be with me. It's like I was completely like submitting myself and humbling myself, even when this person was dead wrong. Even when this person was dead wrong, it's like if I just continually walk in grace and submit myself, like maybe he'll see. He never, from what I know, he never did. And that's really just, it's not my business anymore. But I just remember making this my business. Like it was a mission that I was on, and I wasn't gonna like Jesus himself could have came down and said, you need to stop like fighting for this man. Like you need to leave this man alone. And I would have said, give me 2 more months. I just was so unwilling to let this person go. It's like, not only did I have this sexual soul tie with this person, I also had this spiritual connection to him because I was reading all into this person's life. It's like if I wanted to know something, I knew something. If I wanted to know, I knew. And I remember I started doing collective readings on TikTok. And I knew I knew that people were watching me. I knew that people were watching my TikTok behind fake pages. And I knew that he had also seen my TikTok. And so I started to put out these readings, and it's like, because I was so connected to him in this way, when I would read for the collective, like the collective is who you're reading for and who watches you, like who watches your stuff. And I knew that he was among the people that would watch my stuff. And so I started putting out these readings, and it was almost like this control and this power overcame me. I wanted him to know that I see you. I know what you're doing. I know you're lying. And I want you to know that I know. So there's no point in trying to hide, because I see you. And it really became about control. It became about power. And I became addicted to knowing things that people didn't know. I became addicted to being accurate with my readings, and it was just this lust. It was a lust for control and power, because I had felt so out of control, not only as a child and in my adolescence, but I felt so out of control within this heartbreak that I didn't understand. And so for once, like I felt this control. And when in actuality it was manipulation. I didn't understand that. That wasn't my understanding then. But I also remember in this time that there would be these two separate like voices that would speak to me. And I remember when I would do these readings for my collective on my public TikTok platform page. I remember the dialect, kind of the verbiage, and the verbiage would change. It would go from me saying spirit says or the divine says, and it got very specific. I started to say God, and then I started to say Jesus, and that like really, really, really confused me. And I remember I would be woken up in the middle of the night with Bible verses like running through my head. I'm like, what? And I would look up the verse and hear this verse, and I would go on TikTok and I would do this reading and I would say, hey, like, I'm hearing such and such verse. This is what it says. Like, this could be for some of you guys. Like, take it if it's yours. If it's not, it's not. Like, just not knowing that the verses that were dropping into my spirit were for me. But because I didn't want to have anything to do with Jesus, like, I did not think that that these things were for me. And numerology is a really big thing within the new age community. And I remember when I started my practices, I would always see the numbers 111 and 333. And 111 in the new age community symbolizes new beginnings, like fresh starts and everything like that. And 333, a lot of like community, trinity kind of like collaboration and in partnership. And as I'm just flowing through readings, I'm also at this point starting to practice mediumship. And ooh, I'm all over the place right now. Sorry guys. I'm also starting to practice mediumship, and it was very, very important to me to connect with my grandma and to connect with a very, very good friend that passed away when I was in high school. And so I remember connecting with my grandma and my friend that had passed away, and essentially they became my spirit guides. So these loved ones, my grandma and my friend that had passed away, really became my guides within my tarot readings and within my mediumship journey. And so throughout this whole kind of situation, like I was still dreaming. It's like I was dreaming every night, multiple dreams a night. And as I became more interested in Christianity and Jesus, I was very reluctant. I was very reluctant because there was this trauma that I had. There was this trauma that I had, and I didn't want to have anything to do with Jesus, but there was always this voice that was louder, and this voice made claims that these other deities that I was worshiping didn't. I had many different deities come to me and offer me things. Most prominently, I worked with Aphrodite and Nefertiti, and I remember having dreams of them offering me things, right? Like Nefertiti came to me in a dream and offered me her staff. And did I know what this meant? No, but I knew that I was in a lot of deity worship, and I don't know, I attracted a lot of different deities, and I was like, okay, like this deity wants me to work with them. Like, let me figure out how to offer worship to them. So in this time, like when Jesus had approached me, I just thought, okay, like Jesus is another deity. But it's like, okay, why do I feel this resistance? Like, why do I want to, like, oh, I don't want to have anything to do with Jesus? Like, why is it okay? And why am I so okay with worshiping these sets of gods and not this one? And I began to think like, wait, if I'm claiming to be spiritual, right? If I'm claiming to be able to see and travel into different realms, like it's really just bad spiritual etiquette. It's bad intuitive etiquette on my part to not search this out, right? It's like, why am I okay with offering worship to these deities but not Jesus? And it's because I had a lot of trauma that I didn't want to deal with. And Jesus was the only deity that made these bold claims. That made these bold, bold, bold claims. Like he would say, I'm the way and the truth and the life. Nobody comes to God except through me. And me, I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, I'm talking to God right now. It's like I'm worshiping all these other gods. Like I'm talking to the universe. Like, what do you mean? Like I can't access God through these other deities that I'm worshiping? What do you mean that I don't have this direct line to God? Like, and so he would make these very, very, very bold statements that really started to, it piqued my interest. It really started to make me wonder. But I'm like all over the place. I'm all over the place, and I definitely should have been more prepared, but I also don't want to leave you guys hanging on the section of my life where I literally went through like horrendous pain with this man. So in this time, as I started to get closer and started wanting, I guess, to understand like who Jesus was, I remember having this dream, and this is what led me to really put my hands up and say like, all right, like if the universe or God or whoever I'm speaking to doesn't want me to be in connection with this person, like then that's what it is. I remember having this dream. This person was in it, and another woman was in this dream, and I had seen her before in a dream. And it's like my spirit already knew who this person was. I already knew who this person was, but what I wasn't ready to really comprehend was what came after that. I remember the scene changing. I remember the scene changing within this dream, and me and this girl that he was connected to, we were in this dark gymnasium, and there was a singular like light shining on this table with a chessboard, and she has her seat. She's sitting in her seat, and I'm off on the sidelines in this gymnasium, and the chair is kind of pulled out and like cocked toward me. She doesn't say anything. I don't say anything, but she looks right at me. And it was like this invitation to come sit at the table with her and kind of have like this spiritual battle. Because when I awoke, I had this thought. I was like, someone over there is like me, right? Somebody dabbles within the occult. Somebody knows someone who dabbles within the occult. This woman knows about me either by the way of occult practices, or she had seen some things. And it was this invitation. It was the energy was kind of just like try if you want to. And the prize was this man. The prize was this man. And I remember hearing like to myself, like, don't engage. And that is when I knew that's when I knew it started to make sense. It started to make a lot of sense. Why God would rip this thing apart. Why we can never have this connection. This man was attached to somebody who didn't like that I was in the picture. And it's like this person was either doing witchcraft by the way of this sexual and spiritual soul tie that I had with this man who also had a soul tie with this woman. It's like either she or someone that she knew or that she was paying somebody, but through this connection and through just like this hatred, this woman was able to send a lot of witchcraft like through this spiritual line that this man and I had. And I couldn't like let this person go, and I couldn't understand why God would like, break this thing apart. And I remember just getting like so angry and like blaming God, like I'm doing everything, I'm doing everything right, and I don't understand why this person can't see. But it's like for months and months and months, I didn't have the spiritual vision to see that really the Lord was protecting me. There were things that were going on behind closed doors that I didn't have spiritual vision to see. Like, never in my life would I have thought, oh, like somebody's doing like witchcraft. Someone's paying somebody to do X, Y, and Z. Someone is like looking into my life. Never would I have thought that in my life. But it's like God was seeing what was happening behind closed doors. And this is what led me to really begin breaking this tie with this man. So in this time, as God is really revealing these things to me, he starts to really like break me away and break me apart from this person. And he started to bring people into my life that started talking about this concept of soul ties, which I didn't believe like at all. It's like I had done 50 million trillion plenty of things, and I was never once felt like soul tied to anyone else. But it's like when I experienced this relationship with this person, I was like, oh, that's what the girls mean by that. That's what the girls mean by that. And so I remember in this time though, I had still not had, I was still in occult practices. I was still doing rituals. I was still doing tarot. It's like I was still practicing mediumship, like, but it's like I had this lingering, it's like, okay, Jesus like in the background. Right. And I was trying to get around any other way without having to say like Jesus, without having to submit my life to Jesus, because there was a lot of trauma there. And I was also really just afraid of what people were gonna think. It's like, man, I was literally just doing like X, Y, and Z. It's like, this is like really wild for me to like come out the gate and say like, yeah, like it's Jesus. Like to me, like I just couldn't, like I couldn't do that to myself. I couldn't do that to myself. I didn't want to do that to myself. And so, like I said, like I'm a dreamer. This was one of the big ways that the Lord was communicating to me, because I wasn't opening my Bible. I wasn't opening my Bible. I didn't have a Bible, right? I was like, I wasn't opening my Bible to read like the written word of God and receive revelation. So the a lot of revelation I received was through dreams. And so, like I said, let's circle it back around to the numerology part of this. And so 111 meaning new beginnings and fresh starts, and 333 meaning collaboration, Trinity, kind of all those things. And I would see these numbers specifically from the start of my new age practice journey and my occult journey all the way to the very end of it. I still see these numbers now, but obviously they mean something different now. And I remember having this dream of a blonde haired, blue eyed woman. And I was supposed to trust her. Like, I was supposed to trust this woman. And I remember waking up. I want to say a couple days later, I got a text. I got a text. I can't remember if I had texted her or she reached out to me. I can't remember which way that it happened. Either way, we had got in contact. And immediately, like, alarm bells went off in my head. I was like, wait, this is the blonde hair, blue eyed woman. And this was the same woman that was like my spiritual mom, my spiritual mentor about 6-7 years prior, when I started to go to youth group. And I remember meeting up with her and just being really, really irritated, like just being annoyed, because I knew that she was going to talk about Jesus in a way that was really going to irritate me, and I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear it. And so she asked me to tell her about my life, and I told her. I talked for hours and hours and hours. And she looks up at me and she doesn't really say anything. She says one thing. She says one thing. And she's like, Yulani, I love you and I just want you to be safe. But I have to let you know that Jesus is the way and the truth and the life. And I was like, okay. And I remember looking down at my phone and seeing the number 111, like the time was 1:11 p.m. And this sparked my interest, because prior, it's like I had all of these like Bible verses like entering my tarot readings, and it's like, what is like going on? Like I couldn't comprehend what was going on. And so this was kind of like the final straw. And I remember saying like, okay, okay, if you're real, like I'll submit myself. I'll submit myself, and I'll trust you, and I'll give my life to you. I remember the Lord saying, give me 1 week. I said, 1 week? 1 week of what? And he was like, I want you to fast, and I want you to pray for 1 week. I don't want you to eat anything. You can drink water, but I want you to fast for 1 week. And so I did. This was the first time I have ever fasted in my entire life. And to not eat for 1 week was really out of my scope of understanding. It's like, what? Like not eat for 1 week? But within this week, I obviously was able to like accomplish that by the power of the Spirit. But within this week, it's like the Lord started to reveal himself like a day and night. It's like I couldn't get away from it. And I remember within this week, I was like, my eyes just were wide open. I was like, Jesus is real. Jesus is real. I was like, you're real. Like this is real. I was never brainwashed. Like this is real. Like you're real. I just remember like having these thoughts of like, Jesus is real. Like Jesus is real. Like this is crazy. Jesus is real. And I remember him telling me, like, Lonnie, like, let's do something different. I have something different for you to do. Like, let's put away the tarot cards. Let's stop practicing the mediumship. Like, turn to me. I have something different for you to do. And I remember grabbing all of my stuff, my occult practice stuff, and throwing it in the trash and saying, okay, like, I don't know what you have for me to do. I don't even know if you're good, right? I don't even know if you're good, but I know that you're real. I know that you're not just a deity, you're divinity. And these bold claims that you would make, you're actually fulfilling these claims right in my midst, like right in front of me. No other deity had made such claims like Jesus did. But it's like Jesus was making these claims, and he was standing on them, and he was showing me them, and he was performing them right in front of my eyes. So I remember accepting Jesus, giving my life to Jesus, and really doing things his way. But this was the beginning of another battle that I would face after saying yes to Jesus, and after submitting my life to him. I went through months and series of deliverance, because I had allowed, it's like I was signing these spiritual contracts. Like I was giving these entities access to my body. And I remember having like one of my very good friends and my grandma as one of my spirit guides. And this was one of the ways that these entities really gained a lot of my trust, is because I loved these people and I missed them so much. And it was so important for me to make contact with them when I was practicing mediumship. And so I remember giving like written, like spiritual written permission and verbal permission, like saying like, come like into my body, like you can use my body. And I would do automatic writing. And I remember saying like, all right, like if you're here, like move my hand, move my finger, like my finger moving on its own. So it's like I had invited so many different entities, not only into my sphere, like into my room, but like into my body. And so I underwent months of deliverance. And as I was giving my life to the Lord and as I was walking with Jesus, these entities became extremely violent. Sorry. These entities became extremely violent. And I remember, because I ward for months, and I remember being in my room, and it was dark. I sleep with the lights off, and in the mirror I had seen a figure, and I didn't do anything. I seen it, but I didn't do anything about it. I just didn't want to get up. I just didn't feel like it. And I remember hearing in my head, like, you need to pray. And I didn't. Like, I didn't want to get up. I didn't want to pray. I didn't want to do any of it. And I remember the minute I shut my eyes, and was in this kind of wake sleep state, this entity that I had seen that was in my room took me up from my bed and slammed me against every which way, every which corner, like of my room, like hitting the ceiling, hitting the floor, it throwing me one side of the room and to the other, and slamming me to the ground, and really, like, I could feel its hands like over my throat, choking me. And I had many experiences like this where these entities were so mad that I was giving like my life to Jesus. They were so mad that I wasn't participating in these practices the way that I was. They were so mad that I was breaking free from these soul ties and these strongholds that I had in my life. And I just remember these entities becoming very physically violent, extremely physically violent with me, and then began the really just emotional and mental attacks. I remember the deities and entities that I once served saying, like, you're going to hell. It's like, look, it's like you've read into so many people's lives. It's like you've done this and you've done that. It's like God's not gonna forgive you. God's not gonna forgive you. It's like you spiritually trespass. You spiritually trespass. Like you're not forgiven. And I remember feeling so much shame. I had so much shame. And I couldn't carry it, I couldn't handle it. And I remember the Lord giving me this vision of him washing my hands. And he wasn't looking at how dirty my hands were. He was washing them for me. In a couple of days, I didn't understand the vision. A couple of days I had went home, and the Lord was like, he had basically said, like, your hands are clean. Like, there's therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ. It's like, you're not bound to shame. It's like, yeah, you did what you did, but like, I did what I did on the cross, and that is my finished work. And so the Lord began to really release me from a lot of shame, but the spiritual warfare continued. It's like it ramped up. It's like as I got closer to the Lord, it amped up. And I remember going to this conference and seeing this lady and being really like drawn in by her. And I was like, what is it about this? She was beautiful. She was very beautiful. And after like 2 times of saying it, my friend like dragged me over there to go talk to her. I was like, I don't even know what to say to her. I was like, I just thought like I had never seen her before. Like, she's very beautiful. And immediately this woman started telling me about myself. It's like the Lord was revealing to her information that she could not have known. That she could not have known. She knew that I was in New Age. She knew that I was in the occult. She like knew of all of these things, and she just started speaking life into me. And I was like, okay, this person, like I can trust this person. And so I shared a little snippet of the story with this man that I believe that I was supposed to be with. Because in this time, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody about this. Like I carried this alone because it sounded really, really, really bonkers and crazy. And I was afraid that I was like gonna get thrown into like a loony bin, like because I've been there before twice, right? So I was like really, really, really afraid. And so I remember just very briefly, like telling her about this. And she looks at me and she's like, is this person in a long-standing relationship? And I looked at her just very casually, shrugged my shoulders and said, yeah, I seen it in a dream. And she looks at me and she was like, so you're a prophet. And what the enemy wanted to use your gifting for evil, but the Lord wants to use it for good. And in this time, I'm like, prophet. I'm like, what's a prophet? Like, what does that even mean? Because I'm thinking a prophet, and I'm thinking like, I don't know what I'm thinking. Like, I don't know what I'm thinking. It's like I don't have a true like grip on what is happening, because my understanding was okay. Like I can see into the spiritual realm, and I can do all of these things, and I know all of these things because I was reading cards, right? Because I was in the occult, I knew these things. But even after I had left these things and I really like repented and came back to the Lord, it's like I was still dreaming. I was still receiving visions. Like granted, yes, were they mixed because I needed to go through a series of deliverance. It's like I had no understanding what gifting I was carrying. You know, like I knew things that I shouldn't have known. It's like I knew that I would see dreams and see them in real life. It's like I knew that, but I didn't know that what I was actually carrying was a prophetic gifting. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know that Christian people like I didn't had no idea what this was. And so in this time God really brought people alongside of me to really steward me in this gifting, but the gift had to be cleansed. Like the gift had to be submitted back to the Lord, and really the gifting had to be like pulled apart, because I first, found out that I was gifted in this way by the means of the occult. It's like it all started to make sense why I excelled so quickly within my practices. Sorry, it's like I was using a gifting that I already had. I just didn't know to whom it belonged to, and I didn't know how to use it. And so I underwent months of deliverance, and the Lord, like I said, like I would see the number 333 a lot. And he brought me to Jeremiah 33:3. Jeremiah 33:3 says, and I'm going to paraphrase, like, call to me and I will show you. Call to me and I will answer. I will show you the deep and hidden things. I will show you things you do not know. And I felt the Lord speak to me and say, Lonnie, it's like, Lonnie, you never had to go through the back door. You never had to go through the back door to know what you wanted to know. Everything that you need, everything that you want to know is through me. It's like you never had to go through the back door. You have access through the front door. So what I was doing was illegally entering into the spiritual realm. And it's like when you illegally enter into somebody's home, it's like we have stand your ground laws. Like someone's illegally entering into your home, it's like you have right to protect yourself and your family. And this is how it's how the spiritual realm works. It's like when you enter into the spiritual realm illegally without protection, these entities, these spiritual entities that roam within this sphere have a legal right to claim what's in their home. And these entities had a claim on me. And they refused to let me go. It was this day in and day out battle that I went through. And I remember like having this dream, seeing like Jesus was sitting at the table, and then Satan walks in and sits down at the other end of the table. And I'm under the table and I'm witnessing and I'm seeing this interaction. And Satan says, I've come here to collect. He was here to collect me, to collect my soul. And I remember Jesus looking at him and cutting off his hand. And I woke up and the Lord so clearly spoke to me. And he said, I will never allow Satan to accuse you again. Never again will he lift his finger to accuse you and to claim you. You are mine. And I bought you at a price. I won't allow him to have you. And it was really this promise and this prophetic word that the Lord had given me, because it would still be months and months that I would fight to be free, and months of these violent and heinous encounters with these different demonic entities. It's like the same room that I would offer worship and do these rituals and to these other deities became the same room where I worshiped the Lord, and where I went to battle. I went to battle for my sanity. I went to battle for my life. I went to battle over my life, and ultimately the Lord like was victorious. So I really don't want to make this video too long, but today at 26, I stand here and I am just in awe of what the Lord has done, because I shouldn't be here right now. Like, I shouldn't be alive. It's like the enemy's goal was to drive me to insanity, to not know what was real and what was fake. And I had always said that was my biggest fear. My biggest fear was to go insane and not know my left from my right and not know what was real. That was my biggest fear. And in this situation, in this whole kind of thing, it's like I was experiencing my biggest fear. It's like I was going insane. I didn't know. I didn't know what was real. I didn't know what was real. And Lord really just came in and then swooped in and put me on steady ground. And it gave me my mind back. Truly gave me my mind back. And like I said, like we went through with trusted like mentors in my life, we went through deliverance after deliverance, and these entities fought to stay. Some of them were kicked out right away. Some of them weren't. Some of them I wasn't just dealing with lower ranking demons. I was dealing with principalities, because there's this ranking in the kingdom of heaven and in the kingdom of darkness. It's like there's different rankings for different types of entities, and I was dealing with very high levels of demonic entities. They knew how to stay, they knew loopholes. And so now I sit here and I am free. And I don't understand how or why I'm here. Like I don't get it. Like it's truly a miracle to be standing here and have my mind intact, because the enemy was after my mind. And I sit here today and I still dream. I still have visions. It's like the Lord still speaks to me through numbers. It's just I'm working now and I'm using that gift under the right spirit, underneath the Holy Spirit. yeah, so I just wanted to thank you guys for listening to my very first podcast episode with video on the newly rebranded podcast, the Back to Eden Project. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys.